All right, good afternoon. These are your notes for 15-3, constructing exponential functions. These are going to be a lot like the functions we did last week, so not too much change. The formula that we're going to use for this is f of x equals ab to the x power, where a is the initial amount and b is the common ratio. Okay, so when we do this, it says write an equation for the following. An exponential function that includes points 250 and 250. So the first thing that you have to do is find the b, which is the common ratio. To get that, you're going to do y sub 2 divided by y sub 1. So that would be 250 divided by 50, which is 5. So our b amount is 5. Okay, and then we're going to use the formula to figure out a. So f of x equals ab to the x. And I'm going to fill in what I know. So for the f of x and the x, you're going to choose one of the 2 points. I would always choose the smaller point just because it's easier. So I'm going to say 50 equals a, because we don't know that yet, times 5 and squared, because the x on that point was 2. So 5 squared is 25. So we have 50 equals a times 25. To get rid of the 25, we're going to divide by 25. So a equals 2. So my equation will be f of x equals 2 times 5 to the x. Okay. Number 2 says an exponential function that includes points 1, 3, and 2 and 9 halves. So the first thing I'm going to do is find b. So b equals y sub 2 divided by y sub 1. And because I have a fraction, 9 halves, instead of dividing by, I'm going to multiply it by the reciprocal. So I'm going to multiply by 1/3. 3 becomes 1 and 9 becomes 3. So my b is 3 halves. Okay, then we're going to use the formula f of x equals ab to the x. And again, I'm going to go ahead and use the first point. And I had my students go ahead and, if you're confused, you can label this x and f of x. And maybe you should just for 1 or 2 of them so you remember where x and f of x come from. So this is going to be 3 equals a times 3 halves to the first power. So I don't even really need to put to the first power. To get rid of 3 halves, I need to multiply by 2/3. I can cross cancel those, so a equals 2. So my equation is f of x equals 2 times 3 halves to the x. Okay, number 3 is a story problem. It says a safari park's lion population has been experiencing an exponential growth. In year 3, the park has a population of 32 lions. In year 4, the park has 128 lions. Write an exponential function that includes these 2 points. So the first thing we have to do is come up with the 2 points. So they gave us year 3 and 32 lions, in year 4 and 128. Okay, so those are going to be the 2 points that we're going to use. So b is y2 divided by y1. So we have 128 divided by 32, which is 4. So for a, I have f of x equals ab to the x. Sorry. And I'm going to use my first point. So 32 equals a times 4 cubed. So 32 equals a times 64. Divide by 64, and a is 1/2. So my exponential equation would be f of x equals 1/2 times 4 to the x power. Okay, so these are maybe a bit simpler than Friday. Okay, representing exponential functions with tables and graphs. So the example says, make a table for the given domain, then graph the function. So they give us the function and the domain of -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. So what we have to do is plug those in for the x each time. So my first one would be 4 times 3/2 to the -3rd. Okay, you'll remember that negative exponents mean reciprocal. So the first thing I'm going to do is write this as 4 times 2/3 cubed, because that is the reciprocal of 3/2. So that's 4/1 times 2 cubed is 8, and 3 cubed is 27. 4 times 8 is 32. 1 times 27 is 27. So this is 32/27. -2, so I have 4 times 3/2 to the -2nd. I'm going to rewrite it with the reciprocal again. So 4 times 2/3 squared. And that's going to become 4/1 times 4/9. So 4 times 4 is 8. 9 times 1 is 9. Oh, 4 times 4 is 16, not 8. 4 plus 4 is 8. Geez. So 16/9. So then I have 4 times 3/2 to the -1st. So that's 4 times 2/3. So 4/1 times 2/3 gives me 8/3. So this is 8/3. Try to zoom in a little more so you can maybe see my work a little better. So then I have 4 times 3/2 to the 0 power, and anything to the 0 power is 1. So 4 times 1 is 4. And then to the first, so I have 4 times 3/2 to the first, which is just 3/2. Cross cancel, the 2 becomes a 1. 4 is 2, so that is 6. And then finally we have 4 times 3/2 squared. So that's going to be 4/1 times 9/4. I can cross cancel the 4's. So that becomes 9. Here it might be easiest if you actually divided these out and got the decimal numbers. But 32/27 is just a little more than 1. So I'm going to put that just barely over the 1. 16/9 is just less than 2, so we're going to do -2 and just less than 2. 8/3 is almost 3, so -1, almost 3. And then 0/4, 1/6, and 2/9. Okay, now, oh gosh, I'm so sorry. As you can see, this is not a straight line. Exponential functions are a curved line, so just do your best to make it a neatly curved line. Okay, and that's how we graph exponential functions. Okay, the next part says constructing exponential functions from verbal descriptions. Remembering that a is the initial value and b is the common ratio. And you can find these examples on page 548. Give me a second and let me get there. Okay, so A says, when a piece of paper is folded in half, the total thickness doubles. Suppose an unfolded piece of paper is 0.1 millimeters thick. So we're going to write a function. So A, the initial value, was what the paper was to begin with. So that was 0.1. And then we're talking about it folding it in half, which means it doubles. So our common ratio would be 2. So our formula would be f of x equals 0.1 times 2 to the x. Okay, B says a savings account with an initial balance of 1,000 earns 1% interest per month. Okay, so my initial amount was 1,000. My interest is going to be 1.01. 1% is 0.01, but for it to earn money, it has to earn 100% of what it is, plus that 0.1%, 0.1 or 0.01, excuse me. So this would be f of x equals 1,000 times 1.01 to the x. And we'll get a little more into this when we do exponential growth and decay coming up soon, but understand for it to grow, it has to be worth more than it is. So that's got to be over 100%. Okay, and the last one says a piece of paper that is 0.2 millimeters thick is folded in half. So for A, I would want 0.2. And if it's folded in half, its ratio is 2. So I'd write this as f of x equals 0.2 times 2 to the x. Okay, your homework for this lesson is 15.3, page 550 to 553, and it is to do number 2 through 24 even. Have a great afternoon.